You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey there, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So, can you believe that it is already February? It is crazy. So, this month I want to focus on Tier 1 interventions, and that is class lessons. So, these are your class SEL lessons or your class guidance lessons, whatever you call them. These are those lessons that you are giving to every student at your entire school. So you're going into the classrooms, and these are so powerful because they are the preventative piece of your comprehensive school counseling program. So I want to tell you today something that I have struggled with in the past, but have found some ways to make it work for me, and I hope that you find it helpful as well. And that is classroom management strategies. So as a school counselor, I know a lot of times school counselors have worked in other areas of education before, and sometimes they're even teachers before. But for me, I became a school counselor right out of grad school, so I did my undergrad in psychology, and then I went to grad school for school counseling, and then I had other jobs where I was working as a counselor, like with a resource counselor with adults with developmental disabilities, and then I worked as an academic and counseling specialist at a private company. But I had never really done classroom management. I was always working with smaller groups or with individuals. So I was never doing like a teacher, classroom management skills. And I applaud teachers because classroom management is so tough. You have 30 different kiddos in there, all doing different things, and you're trying to make sure everyone's following the rules so they can learn, and you're trying to teach engaging content. So I really struggled with this at the beginning, my first year counseling, because I just simply didn't know what I was doing. Now, if you feel the same way, I encourage you to not do what I do, which was just try and kind of fail until I figured it out, trial and error. But I encourage you to ask teachers because they are the experts. They're the ones day in and out doing this. So I encourage you to ask teachers, hey, can you help me with some classroom management strategies? Or do some research on your own to figure these out. And then I also recommend just observing teachers. So putting some time in your calendar to go do some observations and seeing how teachers manage their classrooms and manage those behaviors. Now, different classrooms do different things, or different teachers do different things. It's like different styles, basically, personal preference. So I recommend that when you do your observations, you try to find a style that fits you and what you're like. And that's a great way to get started. So do those things to get started if you're feeling lost, but I do want to give you 5 classroom management strategies. So these are 5 quick strategies that you can use next time you're doing a class lesson to keep everyone engaged and on track. So number 1, do a class callback. So you've probably heard these. For example, they'll say like, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. And then the students will say, 1, 2, eyes on you. That's a callback strategy. All right. I've even heard some funny ones that are like, there's a Red Robin, like that's a fast food chain out here on the West Coast. But the teacher would say like Red Robin, and the kids would say yum, which is kind of a commercial that they have. So it can be anything. It can be silly. Your class can come up with it specifically related to like their interest. But 2 things. So I recommend you either having a consistent counseling callback. So you come up with something and that everyone knows that's the callback strategy that they use with the counselor, and you use it across classrooms. Or this might be easier. It's a little more work on your part, but might be easier for the kiddos to remember. And that's to just mock what their teacher does. So for example, if and many of the teachers do the same thing, but let's say you're going into a 3rd grade class and the teacher does the 1, 2, 3, eyes on me callback, then you would have a note like, oh, Miss Smith does 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. And when you're in that class, you do it. The kids are already used to it. This would probably work best with younger students so they don't have to learn a new one and get confused. They already know that's what they do. So it's a little more work on your part, but could be easier for the students, especially the little guys. And that is to use the callback strategy that their teacher is already using. So you could find that out via observation or just by asking the teacher. Or you could come up with your own that you want students to learn, and they know that's the counseling one. And a lot of times it's the clapping. They would like clap 5 times, and then they clap back as a repeat to show that they're listening. So Or you can do a countdown 5 to 1. There's lots of them out there. I'm sure if you Google it, you could find a ton. Or like I said, just do a few observations. Come up with your own. You can make it as creative or as simple as you want. But I do recommend having a callback strategy, and that's so whenever you need to get the whole class's attention. So whether that's right when you get in there, you're probably plugging in your computer, you're getting all set up, and the class is kind of having some downtime from their transition. So you know how it is. And if you're bringing your own computer and trying to get set up in every class, it can take a few minutes. But that's a good way to bring everyone together to let them know that you're ready to begin. Or it's a good way to bring the whole group back. So let's say you did a breakout group where they're doing role play, and then you want to bring everyone back together. That's a time you could use your class callback strategy. Now, you can even do this virtually to get everyone's attention. Virtually, I know it can be really challenging to have everyone paying attention, so you could do that as well. Now, the number 2 strategy I have for you, in addition to a callback, is music. So I love this idea. I've played with it a little bit, but I want to be that counselor that has music integrated into the whole system. I know teachers who have done this. I went to a PD and someone presented on how they were using music and timers, and their class was just operating like so seamlessly. That's such a goal. But you can totally train your students to do this. And you could do this with small groups too. But basically play some music, the same song every time. Remember, consistency is key, especially because you're only going into these classrooms like once a month. But you can play some music while you're getting set up. So students can be like getting ready, chatting, doing a little break, whatever. And then when the music stops or gets to a certain point in the song, they know that it's time to focus. So that's another way you can bring students back, or they know what to expect. So you can have like some pump up music in the beginning, then you do your content. If you have a break and they're working on something, in small groups or independently, you can play a song. Say, okay, we've got 2 minutes left. Play the 2-minute song. And then as the song ends, they know. And again, consistency is key. So if you've been coming in their class for a couple months and they hear that same song, it gets to the 2-minute mark. They're like, oh, we have like 30 seconds left, so they can wrap up. This is a great strategy because you don't even have to say anything. You're not saying 30 seconds left, wrap up everybody, we're about to present. No, you don't even have to do that. They know, they're trained. Well, that point in the song is here. That's the time we have to wrap up. This one does take a little practice. It's not going to happen, the first month. But if you're going in these classrooms over and over, students will learn the familiar pattern. Then we'll learn the songs. And it's a really cool way. So you can have a intro, like wind-up song. Like I mentioned, a timer. Use the song as a timer, so 2 minutes left kind of thing. And then at the end of the lesson, to let them know that they're winding down or packing up or however you're doing it, you can play a song then as well. So I love the opportunity to use music. You could do instrumental only. You can do something with words that they know. Words, actually, lyrics, make it a little catchier, so then they can know exactly what point in the song they're supposed to be doing what. And you could pair this with a timer, like on the board, or if you're doing it virtually, you could show a timer on your screen so students know what they're supposed to be doing and when. Okay, so the first strategy is the callback. Second strategy, music. Third strategy is opportunities for movement. So this is something you can do in a preventative way. When you're designing your lessons, I want you to design them with lots of opportunity for movement. So physical movement is what I'm referring to here. This way students aren't getting bored, because you're going to see the most behaviors when students are bored, when they're distracted, when they're annoyed, whatever. They start to space out, and then they're going to kind of goof off. So if instead of having to redirect them like, oh, I see you guys aren't paying attention, come back to me, we don't even want to get to that point. We want to preventatively have them pay attention. And so to do that, you want to keep your lesson engaging, and you want to have a lot of opportunities for movement. So have them stand up, have them move around the room, have them do a jumping jack break in the middle. Just keep it physical. This way they're staying engaged. Now, this is true virtually, especially because students can get even more distracted and zone out and get more bored because you're not there in person. So if you're meeting virtually, I think this is so important to integrate those physical moments. If you're looking for like some actual physical dances or little routines to mix in there, Go Noodle is a great resource for that. Now, the fourth strategy is to keep it interactive and student-led. So again, this is a preventative strategy. When you're planning your lessons, you want to include lots of opportunities for movement, and you also want to keep them student-led and interactive. So what I mean by that is you don't want to be in the front of the room just teaching the whole time. That's definitely going to make them feel bored, and then they're going to get distracted and maybe act out or start to show some behaviors that you don't want. So instead, make it where they're doing role play, they're doing charades. And even if you're doing charades or something, yes, you can have one student stand up in front of the entire class, like 1 to 25. Or the more you can break them into smaller groups to practice what you're teaching, the better. So in the next episode, I'm going to give you the anatomy of an engaging class lesson and go more into detail about exactly what you can be doing during your lesson. But for now, just know that I want you to teach some things like in a lecture manner just at the very beginning, but then I want you to break up into groups, then come back and everything like that. And a lot of times, so the pro here is that it keeps it engaging, interactive, and student-led because the students are doing things. You're not just teaching to them, but they're actually part of the lesson themselves. So that's the benefit. The negative side and why a lot of counselors are hesitant to do things like this is because once I let them break out into the role play groups, it's really hard to bring them back. And that's where those first two strategies come in play. So the callback and the music. So this all kind of goes hand in hand. Like you need to give your students the freedom to lead their own lessons and to be able to move and to get a little silly. But you need to be able to keep them in control and to know that you can bring them back. So if you're giving them a ton of movement and a ton of role play and charades, but you don't have a bring it back strategy, that could get kind of crazy and out of control. Or if you're not doing those things, you're not even going to need a bring it back strategy because you're just up there lecturing. So it all goes hand in hand. And then the fifth and final classroom management strategy I have for you, this one's a little different. It is to have a character education monthly winner. So what I did, for example, let's say the word of the month is friendship. I would have each student, so I'm going into the classes, I'm teaching lessons on friendship. And then I would have each teacher nominate a student who they think was showing from their classroom, who was showing the character trait the most. So who was being just a great friend this month. And they would nominate that student. Then at the end of the month, I would have all of the nominees come up to the cafeteria or auditorium or wherever you can do it. And I did a little assembly and I printed them out certificates and they were so proud to get their certificates. And then we even had a raffle and like 5 of them actually got a prize, like a puzzle or a Lego or something. This was at elementary. And it was really fun, really motivating for the kids. Even if they didn't win the prize, but they just got the certificate, they were so proud. And these certificates took 2 minutes to print. I just made them myself on some colored paper. Didn't even print in color. They loved them. And again, you could do this virtually or even if you're in person but unable to, assemble a big group together of 30 kids. I could see how that could be like problematic. You could still send them the certificates and still do a raffle. You'll just have to modify it based on your situation, but totally doable, super simple, and really impactful. The kids loved it. So they were eager to be the winner. Now, for example, I was saying friendship was the trait, but have like a little caveat, a little disclaimer there that if they get nominated, in order to get nominated, they also have to prove that they were being a respectful listener during the lessons, a respectful participant. So even if they were being a great friend all month, but they were being, off task during the lesson and having a lot of behaviors during the lesson, then they can't win. So that's kind of a strategy to help them, want to stay focused and want to stay engaged is that they can potentially be nominated. So in order to get nominated, they would have to show the character trait that you're talking about in addition to being respectful during those class lessons. So let's wrap it back up. Again, these are 5 classroom management strategies that you can use. Number 1 is a callback. So that's using something like 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, 1, 2, eyes on you, or the clapping, something like that. Number 2 is music. So training your students with expectations. So by playing music, they can know what's coming next or how much more time they have to do a task. Number 3, create your lessons with opportunities for movement, especially if you're virtual. get a physical element to your lessons where students are up and moving out of their desks and they're not just being lectured to. Number 4, design your lessons to be interactive and student-led. So you don't want to be just talking to them. You want students to be able to lead discussions, to give examples, to do role play, to do charades, etc. And finally, come up with a reward system based on a monthly character education winner. But in order to win, not only do they have to demonstrate the trait, but they have to be respectful during the class lessons. Okay? I hope you find those classroom management strategies helpful. Again, in addition to the 5 strategies I named, if you're already feeling a little lost, I recommend doing some observations to find out what teacher styles that you like, and you can kind of mimic those. You could also ask the teachers for some help if you're having a hard time with those as well. Okay, I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.